Hey everyone, Miss Ware is here. Today I'm going to review with you everything that we've learned so far so you're ready to go for your semester test. We're going to start at the very beginning. So everybody go ahead and draw your staff. Remember, a staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces. I'm going to draw 2, one for treble clef, one for bass clef. In the beginning of your staff, so all the way on the left, you're going to draw your clef. So treble clef, have the line. We have our little curlies, and then we end on that second one right there. Bass clef, that 4th line is super important because we need a dot on top and on bottom. And our clef is going to be super important for everybody because it's going to tell us which notes we're going to use or which language we read. So we have our treble clef language and our bass clef language. At the end of your staff, I want you to go ahead and draw our double bar line. Remember, a double bar line, it's a skinny line first and then a little thicker. Just like that. And a double bar line is going to tell us that we're at the end of the piece. So it says, stop playing, we are done. Just like that. And then in the middle of your staff, go ahead and draw just one single bar line. We're gonna label it right here. So bar line is gonna divide our staff into measures. So right here would be an example of a measure. So now what I'd like to do is we're going to label the notes on our staff, and they're going to be different for treble clef versus bass clef. So in that first measure, I want you to label the lines. In the second measure, we're going to do the spaces. So here we go, treble clef people. We have every good boy deserves fudge. Bass clef, yours is good burritos don't fall apart. So those are our lines. Make sure you have those written in. For our spaces, it changes just a little bit. So going back to bass clef people, we have all cows eat grass. And treble clef, it's F-A-C-E, and that spells the word face. So that's a few examples on how to remember what the lines and the spaces are on our staff. So let's move on. Next thing I'd like to talk about are our musical symbols, what they look like, and how many beats they take up. So let's start with our whole note. So it looks like this, just an open circle. Then we have our half note, add that line, quarter note filled in, and then our 8th note has that little flag there at the top. And we're gonna label right next to it. So this is whole note. You just have to write whole, half, quarter, and then our 8th down here at the bottom. And then right next to it, we're gonna write in the rest that corresponds. So for the whole rest, remember the box is underneath the line. The half rest, the box is on top. Quarter rest, it's a Z and then a C. And then our 8th rest is like a little fancy 7, kind of like that. Right next to it, this one takes up 4 beats. Our half note takes up 2 beats. Quarter note takes up 1 beat. And our 8th note takes up only half of a beat. And now remember, you could have an 8th note by itself, or you could have 2 8th notes combined. It would look something like this. And that line there at the top, remember, is called a beam. The beam is gonna connect those 8th notes together. Our 16th notes also have beams. They would have 2, but the 8th notes only have 1 beam because there's only 1 flag. So just remember that top line is called a beam. So now if I wanted 2 8th notes, let's go back to just regular single 8th notes by themselves. If I wanted to know how many 8th notes fit into a quarter note, well, a quarter note takes up 1 beat. 8th note only takes up half of a beat. So I would need 2 of those 8th notes because a half plus a half equals 1 full beat. So 2 8th notes fit inside 1 quarter note. Same thing goes for if you're trying to fit your quarter notes into a half note. So half note takes up 2 beats. A quarter note only takes up 1 beat. So I would need 2 quarter notes in order to fit inside of 1 of our half notes. So keep this reference. It's gonna help you a lot for the test, knowing how many notes equal what they look like, and how many you can fit inside of the other rhythm. All right, moving on. So next thing I wanna talk about is our tempo. So tempo, if you remember, is how fast or slow the music is. And we have a couple different things that help us play all together because it's kind of hard if you're just don't hear anything and we're just trying to play it all together. So one thing, the biggest thing that we use. It's a device that we use. It is called a metronome, and it makes that clicking sound, and it keeps everybody all together. So I'm just going to use an abbreviation, MET, so it stands for MET, and that is a device that keeps our steady beat. Now, when you hear that steady beat, one thing that you can do individually is you can tap your toe right with the beat, so that helps you feel that pulse. So tapping your toe is going to help you play more in time with everybody, and the tempo is either fast or slow. It could be a whole bunch of numbers in between, but using that metronome and using your foot to play all together is going to be super important. All right, moving on. Next thing, let's talk about our dotted notes. So we did this a little bit a few weeks ago. Remember with the dotted half note? So we're gonna do an example. So here's our dotted half note, looks something like this. It's just a regular half note plus that dot. And remember the dot, right here, the dot adds half the value. So what does that mean? Well, it's gonna change how long that note is. So if our regular half note only takes up 2 beats and we add a dot to it, well, half of 2 is 1. So the type of note that equals 1 beat is our quarter note. We know that from doing that rhythm tree that we did earlier. And so this is going to equal 3 beats total, which is our dotted half note, just like that. And you can add a dot to other types of rhythms as well, but the most important thing right now is that you know that a dot adds half the value. And we'll talk about all those different examples next time when we come back. Next thing, we're going to review what a tie versus a slur is. Remember, they're very similar. They both have that curvy line, but they do mean 2 different things. So our tie is a twin. Remember, it's a twin note. So it means they're going to be exactly the same pitch. And the slur means that they switch. So we're going to a different pitch. So I'm going to draw an example of that on a staff. So right here, I'll have my first measure. Oof. There we go. So a tie, an example of a tie would be, let's say I have a half note on here, and then I have another quarter note here, and I have this little curvy line connecting them together. Well, you're going to add those twin notes together because they're exactly the same pitch. So instead of just 2 beats plus the one, and this one taking up 1 beat, we're going to add them together. So really, you're holding out that note for 3 full beats. An example of a slur, let's start on the same note. It's going to switch to a different pitch, switch to a different note. So here in this example, we would tongue the start of that note. The second one, you would slur, which means you just change it with your air, or you just push down the different buttons, whatever it is for you, but it does change to a different notes without using your tongue. Okay, so that is tie versus our slur. Next thing we're gonna review is gonna be our dynamics. And remember, that is how loud or soft we're gonna play our music. So we have a few different examples. I'm not gonna write all of them out, but I will do the important ones. So when we're trying to play soft, we're gonna use just the little p by itself, and that stands for piano. That means we're playing soft. And then if we have something in the middle, medium soft, and that is with an MP, so that stands for mezzo piano. Then we have our medium loud, that is mezzo forte, which leaves our loud to be just the F by itself, which stands for forte. And then remember, if you add another F to the end of that, it could be fortissimo, which is very loud. And then same thing, if we have 2 P's right next to each other, that means very soft. So dynamics mean how loud or how soft you're going to play your music. All right, moving on. We're almost done. I want to talk about our accidentals real quick. And our accidentals, remember, those are notes that are not in the key signature, or they're going to alter a pitch in some way. So we have our flat sign. It looks like this. It's a lowercase b. We have our sharp sign. And then we also have our natural. Remember, it's an L and then a 7. And they each do something different to whatever note that they're connected to. So a flat sign is gonna lower the pitch by 1/2 of a step. So it makes the sound go down. The sharp, it does the exact opposite. It's going to raise the pitch by 1/2 step. And our natural sign does something a little bit different. It's going to cancel a sharp or a flat. So basically, if you have a sharp or flats in the key signature and then you have a note that has that natural sign, well, it's gonna say, forget what the key signature says, you're gonna play it as a natural note. So speaking of key signatures, that's the last thing we're going to review for today, starting with our order of flats. Remember, the order of flats is gonna be bead, greatest common factor. So in that order is how you're going to see the flats appear. You may not have all of them, but if you only have one, you know it's going to be that first one, B. And then the order of sharps is going to be those same letters, but they're going to be flipped. They're completely 180 backwards. Or you can remember, fat cats go down alleys eating birds. So that's the order of our sharp signs. Now, with using those orders, we're going to try to figure out, I'm going to have one example of how do we figure out what key signature we are in just based off of the flats or sharps that I can see on my staff. So here we go. I'm going to do one for treble clef and then one for bass clef. We're going to stick with the flats because those are more common. I'm going to have 2 flats, so I'm going to B flat and my E flat, just like this. Now remember, when we're trying to figure out the key signature or what scale goes with it, first thing I want you to do is label. So B flat, E flat, just like that. Now the rule for finding out the key when we have flats is you're gonna go, it's the next to last flat. So find the last one and then go back 1, and that is going to be your key. So remember, if you have 2 flat signs in your key signature, we are in concert B flat. Concert B flats, and so that's our key, that's our scale, those are the notes that we're going to use. That means that every single B and every single E that you see, not just those, they could be higher in the staff or lower in the staff, but if it's a B or an E, you know it's going to be flat unless you see this natural sign right up here, because that will cancel out what the key signature has in place. All right, so I think that's just about it. It's a lot to review. I know it's a lot of material, but please, you can use all of your notes that we've taken so far, and we're gonna take our semester test now. So good luck, everybody. I'll see you next time.